The first thing I did not know was that the curse of Ham is a misnomer. Ham's son Canaan was the one who was cursed. Basically, what this lie has perpetuated, that all of the dark races are cursed because of this curse of Ham. Nimrod was Ham's grandson. And it's interesting because the Bible only devotes like 1 or 2 verses to Nimrod. They said that he was a great man. And then that's it. But you will find out exactly who Nimrod was in the book of Jasher, and that's located in the Sefer. And the book of Jasher will let you know that he was a powerful ruler. The area that we now know as Iraq, he ruled over that area, Mesopotamia, parts of Africa. At one point, he ruled over all of the nations on the earth. So isn't it interesting that thousands of years later, if you want to call someone an idiot, call them a Nimrod? The second thing that I did not know that Shem and his lineage were black. I did not know that. So Shem, I believe Shem had 5 sons. We're going to focus on 2 of his sons, Elam and Arphaxad. Elam is important because if you Google Elamite soldiers, or if you Google Persian warriors, Palace of Susa, a famous sculpture is going to come up. And when you look at this sculpture, it's made of glazed bricks, so the colors are still well preserved. And you clearly see that these Elamite soldiers are dark people with bushy hair. So that's why Elam is important. He is the progenitor of the Elamites. And if you want to know how the Elamites look, we have archaeological evidence proving that. That sculpture that pops up is held at the Louvre Museum in Paris. Arphaxad, he is the ancestor of Eber. Eber is important because Eber marries Azarad. And you can see that Azarad comes from Ham. She was Nimrod's daughter. But you're not going to find Azarad in the King James Version. The King James Bible, you're not going to find Azarad. You're going to find Eber, and you're going to find their son Peleg, but Azarad is conveniently left out of the King James Version. You will find her in the Sefer that I talked about, in the book of Jubilees. We're seeing a pattern here, aren't we? Then we go on down to Abraham. We know that not only did his ancestor Eber marry and procreate with a Hamitic woman, but Abraham did as well. And it continued on down throughout their lineage. When you look at Joseph, Joseph was mistaken for an Egyptian when his brothers sold him into slavery. When his brothers came to Egypt years later, they didn't even recognize Joseph. Why? Because Joseph blended in with the Hamitic men. The same with Moses. Moses was mistaken for an Egyptian. The only way you're going to be mistaken for another race of people is if you look like that other race of people. The third thing that I did not know that our skin color is solely due to our genetics. I had bought into this theory that our bodies will adapt to the environment that we live in. Well, The great Persian Empire, hundreds of years ago, was full of dark-skinned people. The original people living in North Africa and the Middle East had melanin and were able to absorb the UV rays of the sun even in 100 plus degree Fahrenheit weather. People will often say that dark-skinned individuals in their countries became dark simply because of the hot weather. This is incorrect. If you Google skin cancer in Israel, an abundance of articles will pop up. And that's because the European Jews who live there are not the original inhabitants of that land. The light-skinned Arab people, Middle Eastern people that currently reside there are not the original inhabitants of that land. People who have a lot of melanin in their skin are the original inhabitants of that land. President Nasser, this is in the late 50s, he made a very, very scathing statement on national TV. He was the president of Egypt, and I will read his statement. It's found on page 155, but I encourage you to look up the video and hear him say it. You, the European Jews, will never be able to live here in peace because you left here black but came back white. We cannot accept you. The fourth thing that I did not know that Israel was a part of Africa. Just like several years ago, I did not know that Egypt was a part of Africa. I'm embarrassed to admit that. But I had bought into these man-made ideas, more specifically European constructs, such as sub-Saharan Africa or the Middle East. What is the Middle East? It's man-made. The Suez Canal. This is a man-made canal that has separated Israel from Africa. But if you go below the surface, approximately 100 miles below the surface, you will see that not only is Israel connected to the African tectonic plate, but Palestine is connected to the African tectonic plate, which means they are both a part of Africa. Modern day Palestine is really ancient Judea. Isn't that interesting? So you have to think, what is behind this? You know, why come up with this name, the Middle East? Why come up with this concept, oh, you all are sub-Saharan Africans? Well, that's done because what they're really trying to say is you all had nothing to do with Egypt. You all did not build the pyramids, and those stories in the Bible are not about you. So when you change names, it's really an attempt to strip people of their identity. The fifth thing that I did not know that the term gentiles first shows up when talking about Japheth. Remember, Noah had 3 sons. And yes, when I purchased this book is so deep that I have 3 dry erase boards. But you see right here, Noah had his 3 sons, Japheth, Shem, and Ham. And the word Gentiles shows up under Japheth's genealogy. So I'm confused as to when I was growing up in my Christian home in a Baptist church, I always heard of this idea of Jews and Gentiles, and I was taught that I was the Gentile. But if I'm the Gentile, then why doesn't Gentile show up under Shem's name or Ham's name? It shows up under Japheth's name. And someone stated that actually Noah's three sons, all three sons were black. That's what I heard from someone, and it makes sense because you can get white from black, but you cannot get black from white. The sixth thing that I did not know that European Jews have made up surnames. I did not know that. The Austro-Hungarian law of 1787, you can look it up, basically mandated that European Jews take on a permanent surname. Prior to this law, their names would change with each generation. So basically, the government stated, you come up with the last name or we're going to come up with the last name for you. So they basically craftily derived surnames from their occupations, from Hebrew names. So some examples are Miller. Miller meant that maybe their ancestor worked at a mill that manufactured grain. So they worked at a mill, their name became Miller. If they were a shoemaker, their name became Sandler. If they were a jeweler, their name became Silverstein. If they were a goldsmith, their name became Goldstein. I believe that Zuckerberg, I believe that meant that they manufactured sugar, I think. Hebrew names. So Davis is derived from King David. Levi or Levinson, that comes from the Levites. Jacob, Jacobson. These are all made up names. So the moral of the story is you cannot trace your lineage back to these people in the Bible because your names are made up. The seventh thing that I did not know that Negro land was actually designated on maps centuries ago. After reading this book, I actually purchased a 1747 British map that shows you Negro land. Not only does it show you Negro land, which is West Africa, it has on there Slave Coast, Gold Coast. Another thing that was important, extremely important, was that they have the Kingdom of Judah right in that area. All right in that area of Slave Coast, Gold Coast. If you think about it, the Portuguese, the British, these people, they needed to know, where do we actually go to capture and enslave these people? Where do we go? Do we go to North Africa? Do we go to South Africa? Where do we go? And so that's why you see these designations on these maps. These are actual maps. And to see the Kingdom of Judah. The Kingdom of Judah refers to one of Jacob's sons, Judah. The eighth thing that I did not know that there was a time in history when some black people were frequently referred to as Jews. When I learned about the Moors being expelled from Spain in 1492, I did not know that the Moors included Jews, black Jews. Now remember, Moor means black. If you look at it as an umbrella term, just like if you look at the word black, if you look at it as an umbrella where you have black Christians, black Muslims, black Buddhists, but we all fall under this umbrella known as black. Well, it's no different in that time. The black Jews, they fled to Portugal. And King John gave them an ultimatum. You either convert to Catholicism or we were going to either kill you, enslave you, or take your children away from you. And a lot of those black Jews, their children were taken away from them, 11 years old and younger, taken away from them and shipped to Sao Tome. The ninth thing that I did not know that there are many tribes throughout Africa today who will tell you that their beginning started in Israel. The Limba tribe, they reside in Zimbabwe, and they can tell you that when they fled Israel, they traveled through Arabia and settled in an ancient city known as Senna in Yemen. They know their history. They carried out of Israel this sacred drum, and it is an artifact that is currently held in a museum in Zimbabwe, and it is believed to be the Ark of the Covenant. It has been carbon dated to be 12 to 1300 years old. The dimensions of this sacred drum, the description of it is very similar to what is talked about in the Old Testament. Another thing that's special about the Limba tribe is they have been tested, and many of the priests in this tribe carry the Kohan gene. It is a priestly gene that connects them to the Levites. They come from the tribe of Levi. They are part of the Kohanim. The Ashanti tribe. Many of us know about the Ashanti tribe. What I did not know was that if you dissect the name Ashanti, okay, so the T-I on the end of Ashanti means children of or people of. So that means the root name is Ashan. I know I have it, it's too light right here. My marker was going bad. But the root name is Ashan. Well, if you look in your Bible, in Joshua chapter 15, verse 42, you will see that Ashan is an offspring of Judah. And where was the Ashanti tribe located? In West Africa. What's interesting about the tribe of Gad is they can tell you the name of the ancestor that brought them to that region of Africa. And his name was Eri. E-R-I. They even have a statue that they built of him. What is so special about this tribe is they never had a Bible. They never had the Torah. And yet when you look in the Old Testament, you will find their ancestor Eri. Not only do they know names of their ancestors, they keep up with a lot of customs and traditions that are Hebrew. Like they blow the shofar. They circumcise their boys either on the 8th day or at a very young age. They do not marry outside of their tribes. When the women are on their menstrual cycle, they have to separate themselves from the living quarters or right after they give birth. And I believe they separate themselves for 7 days. All of these Hebrew traditions, and there are many more, that these people from different tribes scattered throughout Africa, they maintain these traditions. They recognize the Shabbat, which is their day of rest, the seventh day. I hope I'm saying it right, the Shabbat. We call it the Sabbath. We do everything backwards here. We say that Sunday is the day of rest when the Old Testament clearly states that Saturday, the seventh day, is the day of rest. And you have these Hebrew tribes throughout Africa who still honor Saturday. B'nai Ephraim, they settled amongst the Yoruba people. And the Yoruba people referred to B'nai Ephraim as strange people. Why were they saying they were strange people? They were saying they were strange people because they were out blowing a ram's horn. They were out doing all of these things that were not typical of the surrounding tribes. That's because their beginning started in Israel. So last but not least, the 10th thing that I did not know. I did not know that you could actually get tested, get your DNA tested, and if your DNA shows that you have E1B1A, which is basically the prefix to, there's other letters and numbers that are behind it. But if you are part of this haplogroup E1B1A for men, so the men would, it's found on the Y chromosome. For women, it's L3E. If you fall into one of those haplogroups, you are Hebrew. You are related to Jacob. Jacob is your great ancestor. And that means you come from one of these 12 men. Most African Americans who can trace their lineage back to the transatlantic slave trade, many of us come from the tribe of Judah. I'll talk about my personal story a little bit later, but I first have to give credit to Dr. Ephraim. Dr. Ephraim is the one who discovered E1B1A, and he not only did he discover this this holy haplogroup, but he even knows that he comes from Ephraim. Joseph had 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and he comes from Ephraim. Isn't that amazing? And he discovered this about 6 years ago. So there's a YouTube video. It's about 3 hours long, and he explains the E1B1A DNA. Amazing. I want to close this book review out by reading Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68. The Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. For me, there are 3 words that really stood out in this verse: ships, the word again, and Egypt. So when you think about a group of people who went into captivity via ships, that's a no-brainer. That's African Americans, okay? That's the transatlantic slave trade. Even the Arab slave trade when the East Africans were sold into Arabia, okay? The word again, when it says that you will go into Egypt again, so it's not talking about Moses' time when they were in bondage, because it said again. Again means it's going to happen again. And I have to make a little side note right here, a little caveat. Who really built the pyramids? Who built up Egypt? And when you parallel that with today's time, who built the White House? When we look at the United States of America, who built the White House? Who built the railroads? Who built this country? Why is this country a superpower? Why is this country so rich? Why does everyone want to come to America? What's the reasoning behind it? That's a no-brainer as well. Free labor for over 200 years, free labor. And so this third word that's standing out in this verse is Egypt. So Anthony Browder, and he talks about this in his book, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, an excellent book. I already reviewed this book. And when he started traveling to Egypt, and he would come back home to Washington, D.C., he began to notice these striking similarities. And so much so that he created a field trip known as Egypt on the Potomac. Because basically, the founding fathers of this country, they used Egypt as a blueprint. They copied everything. The Washington Monument, that's in Washington, D.C., is an exact replica of this Egyptian Tekenu. It's also called an obelisk, okay? When you look at the Lincoln Memorial, how President Lincoln is sitting in that chair, and you look back at Egypt and you see the pharaoh sitting in that chair, you know that some people are not original. The ancient Hebrews built Egypt, and the Hebrews of our ancestors built this country, built the White House. But also in this same chapter, chapter 28, verse 46, the Most High, he states that that these curses, because chapter 28 is full of curses, and it says that you're going to know who the children of Israel is. You're going to know who the chosen people are by these curses, because it is going to act for a sign and for a wonder. And when you read chapter 28, there's only one group of people that fits those curses. And this concludes my book review.